to the Visionary Activist Show, and I'm your weaver of context, Caroline Casey. So it is the dark of the moon, oof, 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 spooky time, Mercury stationing, we'll say more about that. New moon tomorrow at 12:31 p.m. West Coast time. So dark of the moon is when everyone, elders regardless of age, gather to determine the course of culture. So perfect. The sun exactly squares Pluto right now, which is Chanticleer, Libra, the confluencing of allies. And Pluto says, everybody, all hands on deck, everybody step up. So more than perfectly, we are hosting Robin Tala, known as Tala, artist, activist, embodied advocate of ethical business networks, raised in Sufism, blessed by the Dalai Lama, dedicated to global politics, incarnational agent of Hermes, agents of standards of discernment, gently guiding all out of cuckoo polarity, agent of the unifying story. Remember, it's John Michael Greer who says, if you want people to get nothing done but conflict, convince them they're on one side of something, the number 2. What 2 needs is 3, which is the unifying story. So let us craft our inner dedications so that we may be ever more effective in our civic engagement, spiral dancing towards an environmentally reverent planet, or environmentally reverent humans on the planet, and a racially equitable society. Currently, he has been focused on cultivating information hygiene online. We'll talk about that and sort out what's what in the social media landscape. You can connect with him, Robin Tala, ROBINTALA.com. Welcome, Robin.
Thank you, Caroline. It's so good to be here with you.
Wonderful. That's really great. So we had our backstage confluencing, so many connections. And just for the fun of it, a shout out to your wonderful mother, who is a water dragon like myself. And I never tire of quoting Ursula Le Guin saying, those who do not listen to dragons are doomed to live out the nightmares of politicians. So there we go. So, yeah, well, a confluencing of allies, and we have so much before us. So I did, as we were saying, backstage, but let's just bring backstage on stage. Some trickster genius is scheduling all of us, right? And we are the molecules with which the big story speaks to itself through the agency of synchronicity. So I love that right now, for all of us, the moon is at 9 degrees of Libra, whose image is a canoe having passed through dangerous rapids finally reaches calm water. We go, ooh. And that's where Robin's Venus was when he was born. And it also, it squares your Robin's Jupiter, one of my favorite degrees. We have more canoes coming. A party of campers packing their canoe at twilight, the ability to navigate dark water. So it's like, all right, everybody, let's paddle together. Here we go. So, yes, I know we've connected in a number of ways, but I saw your splendid posts on Facebook about sane reverence, and you were saying, here's some positive reasons to vote and to vote for Biden. Do you want to start off with just a little bit of guiding lucidity there?
Yeah, absolutely. I throughout the 2016 primaries and these ones this year was unabashedly a supporter of Bernie Sanders. I mean, he is absolutely one of my heroes, yes. And I love his fighting spirit and his ideals all the way. And so when he did not win the nomination, of course I was disappointed. So just like many of us, and of course Biden had been my last choice. However, what I am here to do, I am here to create a more safe, equitable, caring, sustainable world for all beings on this planet. And so when I'm engaging with my work, whether it's spiritual or political, what I'm looking at is what is the strategy that I can employ that will bring about the most beautiful, peaceful, safe world. And what that choice is right now is making sure that I and everyone I know and everyone who's listening votes for Biden. And, one thing that I like to talk to my friends about, because, many of us in the whatever you want to call it, new age alternative communities, some of us haven't been very tapped in with politics or how our political system works, choosing to put our energy in other places. And when we do come to politics, oftentimes we don't have so much experience with engaging in that process. And a lot of us, and something that undoubtedly many of your listeners have probably seen in their social media, is that people say, well, I don't want to vote for the lesser of two evils. I want to vote for the person that I agree with, right? They want it to be a moral decision. Well, here's the thing. Voting has never been a moral decision. There are many places in our lives where we can make moral decisions and by moral decision, I mean a decision where you can stick to your highest ideals or else not participate, right? That's a moral decision. Voting is a strategic decision, not a moral decision. Voting is taking an imperfect system, a system where in our two-party system where we have two choices, really, in all reality, we're going to end up with one of these two people running our country for the next 4 years. And it's thinking about your strategy. If my strategy is to create a moral world of safety and peace that things have been talking about, then what is the strategy that I can employ here to ensure that will happen? Now, if I was making an immoral decision like, oh, I'm going to vote for the Green Party candidate, of course, me, Robin Tala, I agree with the Green Party more than any other party. However, if I use my vote for the Green Party in the current system that we have set up, which I would love to be a parliamentary system or a ranked choice voting system, however, it's not right now, then I am I'm doing something that's going against the strategy of what my morals actually stand for. So I'm explaining this because I think a lot of people sort of don't quite get that what this is a strategy. How can we make the most effective choice to make sure that we create the world that we want to live in? And so for me, even though Biden was my last choice in the Democratic primary, right now he is the Democratic candidate. And if there's one thing Joe Biden is, he is a good politician, and a good politician pays attention to what's popular at the time. Sure, I do not agree with some of the stances that Biden has taken in his long history in the Senate. However, who is Joe Biden right now? And I think spiritually we can all identify with this as well. We're all doing inner work. We're all growing personally. Do you want to be judged by as the person you were, 10, 20 years ago? And of course, it's important for us to hold politicians to their record. However, what Joe Biden is he is smart. And he sees that his party is moving further and further left. The progressive wave that's happening right now is absolutely powerful and beautiful. And he knows that in order to win, he needs to embrace that. And in order to keep his party together in this crazy world, we need to continue facing these issues that are so important. So when you look at his record on, say, climate change from the past, it wasn't great. But what did he do as soon as he won the nomination? He reached out to Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Varshini Prakash, the head of the Sunrise Movement, and invited them to the table to craft climate policy that is now the most far-reaching climate policy that we've ever seen a politician propose. And so there's a laundry list, and the post that you're referring to is this 100 reasons that to vote for Biden. And so, as I come on the show and as you ask me this first question, I just want to be so clear about where I'm coming from, because I don't want to just be another voice that someone's hearing saying, oh, well, that's not what I think, or, oh, polarizing things more. What I'm here to do is to create a middle ground. We all care about having a safe place for ourselves and our loved ones. And the question is, what are we going to do to get there? And so in my mind, looking at Donald Trump's history of lying repeatedly over and over, thousands and thousands of lies that he has barraged the collective consciousness with, to the point where people don't even know what to think, creating chaos and confusion, versus, a man who, yeah, sure, is an imperfect politician, but right now is lifting up the voices of people of color, of working class people, and of all beings on this beautiful world to create sustainability and justice, equity, and love. And that's what I stand for. So I'll be making my strategic decision as soon as my ballot comes to support that vision of the world by voting for Biden. And then as soon as he's in, hold his feet to the fire, get out there in the streets and be part of the movement for a better world.
I do want to shapeshift that metaphor that we often use, holding feet to fire. It's like, no, only if the fire is cooking s'mores and share them a little bit, because we might as well waterboard. Let's waterboard them. Anyway, so just, yeah, but absolutely, with everything except for holding feet to fire, finding something else, in accord.
I'll take your upgrade on that, for sure. I'll find some new words there, because I am a weaver of words just like you.
Well, right, exactly. So, and we want to get two birds stoned on one scone, right? Enough of this metaphors with cruelty in them. So, yes, but absolutely in accord with everything, right? Biden least like, oh, no, and composting our harumphattude about, and of course, and the Bernie was wonderful, but wondering how it's all assigned to us to cooperate. Magic is a willingness to cooperate with everything, as you said, strategy. And I love the Southern commentator, Bo, who says, voting is the least form of participating, but the least you can do. And then he goes on to talk about really mutual aid, right, which is we're electing a community, we're electing a story. We want our networks of support. But the vote is crucial. And then, for me, composting harumphattude is going, oh, no, there is magic everywhere in some form. I love that this election cycle, this Mercury stationing now, directly above us in California at 11 Scorpio, the Renaissance Council, quintiles Pluto. So it says, if we gather together with our unifying story of sane reverence and paddle together through this turbulent rapids, right, then what a good idea. If we have the Renaissance Council, then we're going to make it through, everyone paddling together. And so Bo says that, absolutely, the networks of which you've been weaving forever and from your birth and your own narrative and your engagement with festivals and all of those things, everything reinventing themselves now, right? But so how shall we paddle together and compost harumphattude? So I like keeping our boat metaphors going, saying, all right, it's an assignment. Politicians of our choosing are the sail, we're the wind, right? Exactly as you say, going, we're going this way. And whatever we speak to in another is the part that we're feeding and encouraging. And, and a wonderful ally, deeply discerning and often grumpitudinous, several months back was like, I wonder how we could help Biden. And I did say, I'd never thought about that. I was just grumpy. So composting grump and then going, because in this narrative of Mercury stationing now, and then it retrograde, and then it goes direct on election day, as in the election of 2000. Oh, but we're going to work with that. There we go. And then returns to where it is now, called out of Mercury's shadow, on November 19th, which is Joe Biden's solar return. Venus is on Kamala Harris's sun, which is a beautiful degree. It's a person in deep gloom, unnoticed, a glowing circle of angels surrounds them. And I love that always, because when we're alone, we can fall into like, ugh. But when we are the Renaissance Council, when we gather, we're the glowing circle of angels and coming into accord. So that's, and then because I've been talking about this for months, and the November 19th, and Biden goes to Gettysburg. November 19th is the Gettysburg Address, very resonant with now. And he says those important words, that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. And he gives a really great speech. Again, we can all be better than we are. And I go, ooh, he's tapped in. He is tapped in. And we just want to go, okay, we can transcend our, all the things that you said, going, the record. And I like the image of him appointing Anita Hill to the Supreme Court. That would be some ironic redemption. There we go. So yes, in accord there. And what we said, backstage, I said, I'm so drawn to Dionne Fortune with her magical, effective work in World War II. When she said, when people asked her, when will the war end, she goes, can't tell you when, can tell you how. it will end when the causes that gave rise to it are resolved. And I kind of want to hand it to you also over. Raised as a Sufi, with a great heritage that you feel free to include as much of it, with wise hippie parents and holistic nutrition and global politics and everything. But I go, ooh, dominion, the mistranslation of the word dominion is very before us in the Supreme Court nomination, which, they're voting on October 22nd. I'm not saying it's a done deal. Anything could happen, but we want to be calm. But dominionist, Amy and Pence, dominionist, and Koch brothers, dominionist, they love domination of the earth. It goes way back, way back, way back. And then, I don't know, did you ever hear the Sophie story that I told you about their understanding of the mistranslation of the word dominion? Was that in your heritage?
I hadn't heard that particular one. There are so many stories, but tell me again.
Okay, I will tell us again because I love it so much. This is from Neil Douglas Klotz. May he be praised, all of our allies. So we were talking about mistranslations, like the fact that the word, when Jesus says, be as wise as serpents and as gentle as doves, the word he uses for serpent is the same word for Eve and wisdom. Serpent, Eve, wisdom, same word. And so I said, so all subjugation of the earth and women and war, is a translation error. And he goes, yeah, pretty much. But the greatest translation error was the dominion thing. And God, Yahweh, gave humans dominion over the earth, meaning, they work for us. And he said the Sufis have a different and more accurate take on that word. And their story is that, God is handing out tasks. Goes, who wants this? Who wants this? Here's one. The task of protecting and guiding all creatures to their essential nature. And the wolves said they were busy, right? But the humans said, we'll take that. What could go wrong, right? So apparently, anyway, so back to the dominion, right? And into, stewardship and harmonious accord and real respect. So I do love that. So
I absolutely resonate with that. I mean, I think the language that we use really informs our experience as humans, and we really need to watch and be conscious of how we express. And of course, with my chart being ruled by Hermes, Mercury, Thoth, this has been a huge part of my journey. I'm a storyteller. And so with what you're speaking to right now, we think of this word dominion, and it has such a overbearing cultural context to it. So transforming that to stewardship, or wisdom, like you're saying, and really that's what informs my activism. It's ironic because some of my friends on social media are trying to put me into this corner of, you believe everything the mainstream media says, and all this stuff. And it's so interesting because my background is actually that of complete non-conformity, of complete anti-establishment. I started out as raised on a Sufi path, on a spiritual path, like you were mentioning, but then that leading to me just really examining the world and what's happening and taking a very strong path of activism, of realizing that I have such a powerful, especially existing in the United States as a cis white male, I have so much unearned power that can be used for good means. And so I got really into activism, and I was that anarchist teen. I was that 8-year-old speaking at the environmental rally. And because of wanting to know how to change the system, I got really deeply fascinated with understanding the system. How does it work? How do things actually happen here? If I just go, I'm not going to pay attention and put my fingers in my ears and run around going la, 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 I'm not going to be able to do anything in this contrarian way. So what I dove into is studying U.S. politics, studying global politics. I listened to many, many podcasts from various different sides of the spectrum to understand what's really going on. And, so in this time right now, the pandemic hit, and all these people out there who had never really paid attention to politics, including tons of people, tons of friends of mine who before the pandemic at a party would come up to me and say, hey, I never pay attention to politics. Would you tell me like what's going on and how does it work? And they would, look to me for advice. Well, give the pandemic 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks of them sitting at home, and all of a sudden everybody is an armchair expert on the political system. And of course, we want to feel sure. We all want to feel like we know what's going on, because the truth is, in this time right now, with this very interesting and unique circumstance that we're in, nobody knows what's going on, and there's actually not an answer right now. And we as a collective society are needing to are being asked to as Richard Rudd with the Gene Keys says, is take a pause. We're being asked to pause. And that can be a very uncomfortable thing for people who haven't done practice in spiritual paths, which teach us how to pause and get into that mindfulness. And so here are all these people squirming around, feeling uncomfortable, not knowing what to do. And what do? They go to social media and try and grab onto something. Now, it's easy to polarize. It's easy to grab onto the total mainstream narrative or grab onto, a conspiracy narrative or something like that. And we saw the rise of QAnon and these reincarnations of conspiracies that existed in Europe in the lead up to World War II, except repackaged with different names. And well-meaning people who I know whose hearts are aligned with the healing of the world and creating, like I said in the beginning, a safe space for sustainability for people of all races and colors, all of a sudden are thinking, well, I want to be sure about something, and I know that I already didn't, quote unquote, trust the system, which of course things are complicated. We can't just blindly trust anything. All of a sudden are swinging over to trusting these wild conspiracy theories. Now, that's not to say that I don't think any conspiracy theories are true. Conspiracy theories that are based on good evidence, whistleblowers, logic, not just wild belief systems that are based on emotional reactions. There's lots going on in the world, so I don't wholly discount anything. But I do think, and this is why I like to bring in the topic of information hygiene, is that we need to learn. The human brain isn't used to the internet. The internet is such a new thing in our consciousness. We don't know fully how to use it. The human animal takes a long time to adjust and evolve into whole new ways of communicating with each other. And so it's time to really look, what is it based on and what do we believe? Because are we just trying to have dominion over something, over ourselves or over the earth, to be sure about something, to feel safe in that surety? Or are we willing to really do the hard work to look and listen and calm our nervous system so that we can approach the information landscape with that same grounded theory that we have learned through our experience in our lives? And so when it comes to the earth, when it comes to my spiritual path, it's all part of it. It's a holistic process. And so right now I'm here to tell people, and I'm here to tell my friends and the community and to share that it's important to look at evidence. It's important to look at data. It's important to not just react emotionally to feeling unsure or unsafe. And when we do that, we start to see that everything isn't as polarized and crazy as we think. Our government and this system is just a bunch of individual people trying to do their best and make decisions to help make this world a better place. And some have different motivations than others, that's for sure. But, I think to roll back around to your original question, I think that we're coming into a time where we have the opportunity to interact with each other and with our living world differently, and to move away from the topic or the perspective of dominion and move into the perspective of claiming our position in the interrelated web of life, that we're all affecting each other. And so whatever we do to this planet is going to be felt by us, by our future generations, and by all of the beings in this world. So let us come into a space of using some of our energy, hopefully lots of our energy, to making that space as beautiful, as just, as equitable, and as peaceful as possible.
Beautiful. Yeah, no, and animating we can all agree about this. No, and all the things that you say are useful. Let us compost reaction, because to react to anything is not free. To cultivate an ever-expanding repertoire of responses, is to ally ourselves with nature's ingenuity. So, to be, first responders. And the Jupiter-Saturn says, well, everything before us is a opportunity, responsibility to be stewards. But I do admire your calm embrace of allies, all of our allies who might have been whatever you're better. I've been doing some of this and not reacting and not kind of because and then to go to the root of it, like what really gave rise to this, as you've been excavating or archaeologically digging, going, where did this start here? And it is a desire for certainty and a desire for a guiding story. But I think, as discerners, right, my moon in Virgo, your sun in Virgo, our moons are opposed, teasing the micro to the macro. It's like, so it's true that in the late 30s, last time Uranus was in Taurus, Germany had Nazis and America had the New Deal, and now it's almost reversed, right? But for years, decades really, there's been an important point, which is, in the 1930s in Germany, there was lots of what we would call New Age or New Age, yoga, festivals, music, whatever, but it wasn't tapped in to the incarnational actuality of great danger brewing around, right? And as you said, I think these are really important points for all of us in council. There is always some kernel of truth to any conspiracy theory or story. That's how it works. It's like, yes, there is fake news. Yes, we all have grievances against mainstream media, but we discern, right? There you are, Captain Discernment, Agent of Hermes, going standards, there we go, to be tapped in. And for the fun of language where we get to go, I would encourage us all to throw the word "triggered" into the cauldron, meaning I was brought into a reactive state by what you said, because triggered makes one a gun, right? So there we go. So I just want to throw old psychological language, feet to fire, triggered, into the cauldron, that our language, metaphor, and story be in accord with our dedicated hearts. But back to your point and to and fro on it, is that the QAnon thing, you're going, and back to our anarchist backgrounds. I love that. Yes, I was that person too. I'm just the same age as your dragon mom, but we're all resonating too. Yes, I was there going, no, this is this privilege and philosophical and activated anarchism is a beautiful, wonderful thing. We might not use the words been tainted and polarized, right? And abused, but it does mean mutual aid. It does mean what we intrinsically do for and with each other, like let's help each other out. That's and mutual aid and Kropotkin, other theories of evolution, all of those places we could go. But it does seem what QAnon taps into is a hunger to be special and right. And I like making the distinction, like, let's throw special into the cauldron because it's kind of colonial, and ladle out unique, because each person who crafts their own uniqueness liberates everybody to craft their uniqueness, whereas special is kind of a celebrity thing. And everybody insourcing, let's all insource our autonomy. There we go, in a calm, reflective place. But you've been practicing, I want to hand it back to you here too, which is, Aikido spiraling, which is when people go, you don't know anything and you are a sucker. I've had such things said. And you have been able to maintain your calm, right?
At my best, yes. And
then when will you aspire? Okay.
I view this moment as an opportunity to really deepen into my own spiritual practice, because being reactionary, whenever I respond out of a instant reaction, especially on social media these days,
yeah,
I tend not to feel very good. I tend to feel quite unstable and off my center. And so I think back to the spiritual teachings that I've received from, my time in Egypt, or my time with the Dalai Lama, or my time with the ancient Sufi lineage that I had the privilege of being born into. And every one of those teachers and more really invite us into this place of stillness, into this place of pausing, like I quoted from Richard Rudd, into this place of coming back from the edge of everything being rapid and immediate. And so when I read something online from someone I do or don't know that seems ridiculous, and there's a part of me that just wants to scream at them, I see, this is my opportunity here for self-mastery. This is my opportunity to actually take a pause and think about, what would I like to say here? And also to think about, how can I create connection before creating separation? Because if we always are creating separation with the people we're talking to, then we end up completely isolated and alone. And nobody wants that. And so when I see someone, posting something I find ridiculous, at my best, of course, I'm not perfect, but at my best, I like to ask them about where they're coming from first. Like, I see you really care about, what's going on in the world right now. Tell me more about that. Asking questions, being interested rather than interesting. And this is something I've learned from my work with conscious entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship online as well. It's, when we interact with each other in the marketplace of products or ideas or philosophy or spirituality or politics, it's the marketplace is a place for interaction. And so, social media is really the commons. It is our new marketplace, especially in the time of the pandemic when so little social events are actually happening. So how do we refine our interactions in such a way that we actually create connection? Because, for example, I have more than a few young friends who are part of either the millennial or Generation Z, who I know these people in person. I know that they care about the environment. They love people of all colors. They do not want violence. They believe in people having the freedom over their own bodies, et cetera, et cetera. These are progressive ideals. However, I see some of these people saying, using the word liberal as a negative, as an insult. And I've dug into that. I'm like, why? Why? Because, the term liberal stands for these same things that you stand for. So what's happening? What I see is that when they're questioning any of the standard narrative, rather than being engaged with in a way that's exploratory, they're just being called stupid or being, it's easy for us who may have a lot of experience with studying, politics or the nuance of information or propaganda, to see someone posting something that seems ridiculous and just say, "Oh my God, you are so dumb. That's stupid. That's wrong. You are wrong." And it's easy to say that. I could understand.
Wait,
but
I
look
know.
at it from the other.
This is all wonderfully important, but you've been so compelling that we blew past our break music moment just for the fun of it. So hold all those thoughts. Hold all those thoughts. And we're going to have our very short Taj Mahal coming in here. There we go. And we will be right back after a very short Taj break.
She shook the constellations and dazzled them crossed his eyes. She showered his head with quasars and made his Taurus cry. Oh, get down. Johnny, 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 come blow my Johnny home. Ooh, Johnny, 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 come blow my Johnny home. Telegraph my indigo sky ship, make its voyage long. Now get down.
Welcome back, allies, to the Visionary Activist Show. I'm your weaver of context, Caroline Casey. It is dark of the moon. We're gathering together to paddle through this with this exciting, dangerous, beautiful river. And our guest today is Robin Tala. And Tala is who he is, which means rhythm, he told me. And you can find him at robintala, Tala.com. Yes, no, you were in the middle of many, many crucial thoughts. Feel free to dive back in. I took notes. We can dive back in, but you were in the middle of saying...
Yeah, I'm right with it. Yeah, so
okay, good.
I think one of the most important things for moving forward into creating a better world together is to stop calling each other names, to find our commonality before pointing out our differences. Because when we just respond on social media to, oh, you're wrong. Like, well, from my perspective, if someone says, invokes some, conspiracy about all the Democratic politicians being part of a blood drinking cult and harvesting, some kind of chemicals from children for some kind of drug, like that has been proven to be not true, is I can say you're wrong. Like that's actually perpetuating a old anti-Semitic conspiracy from Europe from like the turn of the century. I could say you're wrong, but what is that going to do? That's going to polarize that person to saying, oh, well, am I wrong? I think you're wrong. Actually, you're just buying into the mainstream media narrative, blah, blah, blah. And is that true on my end either? No, they don't know me. I actually come from a very anti-establishment background. So what we need to do first and foremost is when we hear people clinging to or being sure about anything is to first understand where they're coming from. To say, hey, I hear that you're really worried about what's going on right now, or you really care about what's going on right now. And I am too. And I'm just trying to figure out what's going on here as well. And that starts to bring us back together. A friend of mine just posted something on social media I thought was really great. My friend AG, he said, many of us in the quote unquote new age culture have disavowed religion because religion tells us what's right and wrong and that it has some kind of authority. And we've come into this space of having our own experiences, whether that's in workshops or mystical experiences or medicine ceremonies or what have you. And but really we're just creating the religion of me, where because I've had a vision of something, I think I'm right. And if you think differently, then you're wrong. How can we come into a space of actually just observing the beliefs that come and go and finding the commonality beneath them, and then guiding ourselves and others back to a place of sourcing our information from actual evidence and actual data. So I've been engaging in this a lot recently, and I don't have it all figured out. But I do think it's a really important thing to be talking about right now. And I think that most of all, what's going to heal this world is for us to come together in our commonality and work for a better world that we know is possible, right? And Caroline, I want to say something else. I am really grateful to you for being of course, a wisdom carrier, but also a reprogrammer of language. Like you just did before we had this last segment. I have been listening to this show for many years. Coming of age in my 20s in the Bay Area, your voice was one of the guiding lights for me. And if I had known that I would be here talking to you right now, I would definitely have been quite flabbergasted. But I do think that it's really important to keep composting and reimagining the way that we relate to each other, and language is such an important part of that. So here I am on an interview with you, still learning and still transforming,
it's
transmuting, transfiguring these very words that I use to achieve these goals.
That's adorable. Right, and also, yeah, I don't wisdom carrier. I don't know wisdom schmisdom, but we do what we can.
They all say that. They all say that. All the good ones say that.
Well, it's true. And I'm definitely not a shaman, nor a life coach. But anyway, yes, so much in what you say. And the mythology. In the underworld, when something starts to face off exactly what you said, we are guided as part of our expanding repertoire to go, what's your story? What's your story? And I've used that to great effect. Talking across borders, to going to CPAC, the lowest realms of hell, and the Republican Convention, and finding conviviality there. And it has been more conniption fit inducing to find our allies, in the health and spirituality and even astrological realm, who are like, QAnon. We are, drinking anyway. All that you reference, that's been more challenging than talking to right-wing Republicans in a sense, to keep our. But to tease that out, because it's also like. GMOs, right? And I love ally Claire Cummings' invaluable metaphor, especially when I hosted them, and Claire will be returning to radio with Melissa Nelson soon in November, possibly our Thanksgiving special on food and indigenuity. But her metaphor, is when we cut DNA, we are cutting ourselves off from ancestral guiding. And that's so valuable. And what you're saying too about, being cultivated, educated too, so we don't cut ourselves off from the guiding behind us. But, I know people, who are very GMO, who work with Bill Gates and think he's a splendid fellow, and anybody who's against GMO wants to starve Africa. And so practicing to step into the circle going, we are in accord. We want all humans to have enough to eat. We honor your dedication. However, there's now these other things. Yeah, so it is step into the center, the common thing, and then slowly spiral back out with information. And we're all keepers of information. Did you know is also an excellent lead in, because nobody minds being asked, did you know? What's your story? And did you know? Unless we ask it in a snarky way.
Absolutely.
Which is why we do want to.
I'm so glad that you brought that up too, because, I don't want to also spiritual bypass here. We're not just one big happy family that, love and light, la, la, la. Yes, we are all connected, but also what we do matters. And there are plenty of people in this world and in our society who, by no fault of their own, have to face some of the most horrible, polluted, violent parts of our society, especially, our BIPOC allies who are seeing the brunt of police violence in a incredibly disproportionate levels from those of us who are white of European descent. That is just true. This is data. And so by speaking to finding common ground, I in no way would want to sweep anyone's experience under the rug. It's important to then come, exactly like you just said, with, but did you know? The important thing, I think, is that we need to set the table, like you're saying, to step into the circle and find our common values so that we can earn the trust. Because people say they've done their research. You know what? I'm going to call bull on that, because no one has the time to do research
it's a slogan
on everything.
Now, right?
What do you say?
I'm sorry, we were talking over each other due to delay. Sorry, but yeah, do your research has become a slogan, right? It's sort of like
Right.
it sets our hackles up, going, cult alert. Anyway, back to
Right.
you. Yeah,
It's become a slogan, and but the thing is, like, we all need to admit that no one has the capacity to research everything. What we're actually doing is choosing who to trust. And so make yourself a person that someone trusts first. And then ask the question, but did you know? If you agree with, everyone being establish the common ground first and then provide the information. If you agree that all people, regardless of their skin color or levels of melanin in their skin, should be safe from police violence, then what do we do about the fact that Black people are disproportionately murdered by police? Like, what do we do about that? This is what I think. But creating that trust first. So I think that it's important to realize that we are being manipulated by many different people and entities with different opinions, and the conspiracy, what's being labeled right now. Again, there are some perfectly relevant conspiracies of the past, things that have happened, and it's not to say that everything is straightforward now, but what we've come to call in our current moment in culture conspiracy theories are mostly very unsubstantiated, regurgitated, and people, if you believe in some of these conspiracy theories, I am not insulting, because I understand how people come to this. But I encourage people to actually start looking at some of the research on the other side, because it just so happens that a lot of this stuff is the same content that has been used throughout history to perpetuate prejudice historically against Jewish people. And it's not obvious that that's what's happening now, but by participating in it, you're actually furthering that consciousness and that long lineage of separation and prejudice. And so it's important that if we really do value love at our center, because we're seeing so many people in the wellness community, the yoga community, buying in to this QAnon stuff. And so,
well,
go ahead.
And I just want to add nuance. Like there was a thread where people were jumping on, people who've made valuable contributions in the past to health and wellness and everything, and who've gone possibly a little cuckoo. But in the, like, whatever, it started to become slightly inquisitional, and this person's a dingbat and that person's a dingbat, and some of it's sort of satisfying. But people were jumping on, Christiane Northrup, and whom I know from way back, did a lot of astrology work with her way back, and she made invaluable contributions. And then it's like, getting a little culty, getting a little cuckoo there. But people were dissing a particular video, and I was like, well, I'm going to watch that, where she's being interviewed by a callow, earnest QAnon youth. And much of it is completely sensible. We start off all sensible, and about pharmaceutical industry, and yes, okay, we're there. And then it goes into polarity. Then it goes into we and the thing and the children and the blood. Okay, and we go easy. So nuance. Let's all take a shot of nuance. There we go. And what's a distraction? And what are we being distracted from? And well, I'll toss it back to you too. Is I have found it easier to talk to right-wing crazy Republicans than certain whatever, because it's part of it's the category, just cause you fill in the blank. Have taken ayahuasca 1,500 times. Just cause you or whatever does not grant a credential of anything. And very often, part of our team can have an ecstatic experience of some kind and doesn't know that anybody else in history has. So it's a kind of salvation certainty complex. And we go, no, just easy, that's right. Let's just throw salvation complex Messiah thing into the cauldron there. And then the last little thing before I want to toss it back to you is, what I found effective, for us all to play with is, and this is in all sincerity, when things get hot, like I go, well, how would you define wise leadership? What's your definition of the purpose of wise governance? What's that? And again, in a sincere and truly egalitarian manner, because it pulls one right out of the polarity, and very often people are surprised, like, oh, and what a good idea. Let's define things. What's the desirable world? Let's go there. It's if we start with vision, avenues of synchronicity open up. If we start with how, then everybody goes to war. So I just wanted to put those things. Define your vision of wise government. What is your definition of wise leadership? Perhaps we can come into accord there. And it's my friend Deborah Felmuth reminding us that in Arabic, salam is not peace, is not the absence of conflict. It's the presence of oneness. There we go, oneness. Okay. Now back to you.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm completely with you on that. I think a really good strategy for unwinding ourselves from the very alluring trap of polarizing argument in the comment section is to ask good questions. And that question you just asked is a great one. And I would encourage people to write that down and use that. Well, so what is if everything is bad and the government's not working and all these things, then what's your definition of wise leadership?
Right.
Because that's just, I love that.
Well, just to insert, I was talking to a nice, earnest, Trump supporting guy at the beach, and he's like, oh no, Trump is really the guy with the, and I just want things to be just as they are and be good for my grandkids. And it's like, okay, but Trump's really the guy. So I did just say, well, what's your definition of the purpose of government? And he's like, oh. And then we started off together, and I go, let's just say it together. The purpose of government is to protect, and he said, the Commonwealth. And then we did high fives, right? And I go, I'm going to tiptoe away now because that was great.
We'll leave it on a high note. Yeah.
We're getting along so well. I'm going to leave at the moment. Knowing when to leave is also important too. Going, that was great. Let's leave right there, and we'll. Yeah. Anyway, so yes. Yes.
It's one of the things that I really learned upon studying Ruth Bader Ginsburg's life a little bit more after her passing, that I didn't know about, and that really fascinated me was how her purpose when she was arguing cases as a lawyer in front of the Supreme Court before she was on it, she had this singular mission to create equity between the genders and more so to expand women's rights. But she didn't join the suffrage movement, or she didn't join the feminist movement at the time. She instead developed a strategy. And I want to bring it back around as we're circling up here, back to what I said at the beginning about voting being strategic. She created a strategy. Some of the first cases that she argued in front of the Supreme Court were actually about gender discrimination towards a man. Now, at the time in the feminist movement, that would have been almost sacrilege. But what she did is she took the justices of the Supreme Court through her storyline that she was creating through multiple cases by looking at society and saying, okay, this society isn't ready to just hear women have the same rights as men. Look at our society. So let's start showing how gender discrimination can happen, but let's do it first with a man so that we can establish a precedent that first gender discrimination exists. Okay, so she won the case with the man. And then she brings another case where it points out a similar thing but with a woman. And then the justices couldn't go back on that because they just recognized the presence of it. But that's strategy, okay?
That's
so
strategy.
We're not advocating for kumbaya moment and just get along with everyone and everything will be fine, because obviously we are facing a moment in our country's history that's closer to an autocracy or fascism than our country has ever been. And it's very scary, and it involves and demands all of us to be very real about what's happening here and not sweeping anything under the rug. But what is our strategy? Are we clinging to the polarity and shouting at each other in such a way that that nothing is accomplished, or are we able to actually unwind the for-profit polarization that the algorithm thrives on in order for us to come back into our hearts and actually have meaningful discussions that can potentially shift the way that people think and help people become more engaged. And by doing that in the political and social media sphere, we are also practicing at the same time some of the most helpful personal growth and spiritual practices that help us be more happy and balanced in our own lives as well.
Brilliant. No, to spiral out of polarity, because polarity feeds the Dementors. There we go. What two needs is three, the unifying story. No, that's really great. So, and it is a constant, well, we all blow it, right? We all blow it going, oh, that could have gone better. But that's why we go to the bunny planet to redo things. For here's the day, or here's the news, or here's the conversation that should have been. And there's nothing more fun than actually being quite spicy and critical, or receiving such, in a good, pretty truthful way, and the other takes it, or we take it, and it's like, oh, that's just the best. It's just the most fun to go into these dangerous realms, right? But with a kind heart. That's the assignment there, right? Because if we go in with harumphitude, it all feeds the Dementors. So this is great, Tala. And I like thinking of it as the beginning of our conversing, because we had more notes from backstage. We could go on for years, and maybe we will. So that's really great. So again, people can find you how?
People can find me at robintala.com, which points to my Instagram, which is @robintala. And I'm actually in pre-production of a podcast of my own called Talks with Tala, Meaningful Conversations for Personal and Planetary Transformation. I also help people create online income in order to create financial empowerment to raise an army of philanthropists and do the good healing work that our world needs. So I encourage people to find me and connect with me and talk with me. robintala.com. Thank you so much, Caroline, for having me.
You're welcome. And maybe it's not an army, but a council. There we go. We'll keep playing. That's great. Thanks very much, Tala. Thanks always to Kirsten Thomas, a great board up, and I'm Caroline Casey, and we will reconvene next week all on this exciting adventure. Thanks again, Tala. Woof woof.